Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Let's go. Let's laugh. We are imperfect after all.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the Imperfect Us Podcast.
I'm Leanne Camilleri.
And I'm Leesa Downs. As hosts of the Imperfect Us Podcast, we share relatable stories that celebrate we are all perfectly imperfect humans leading perfectly imperfect lives. We discover practical and evidence-based strategies that draw on the science of wellbeing and positive psychology that help us to uncover the barriers that might hold us back from being our authentic selves and turn them into opportunities so that we can show up more consistently, doing what we really aspire to do and who we want to be.
We acknowledge the Wadawurrung and the Kaurna people as traditional custodians of the beautiful lands on which this podcast is being recorded. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to other First Nations people who are here with us today. So, let's get started.
Well, hello and welcome everyone. We would firstly really love to share our heartfelt gratitude for your love and kind words, your compassion, and also your understanding as we needed to press pause on the Imperfect Us podcast to navigate a few struggles. We are really grateful for your patience and your encouragement during this phase, and really thank you for that. However, in today's conversation, Leanne and I thought that we would share with you some tips and tools that we drew on as we had to navigate some struggle and found some beautiful and unexpected surprises and learnings. So, if you're all ready, let's dive on in. Now, Leanne, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Really good. And had a really lovely time connecting with family and so forth. And it's great to see you again as well. Now, Leanne, I thought we might start off with an emergency.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, okay.
All right. Well, as you know, as we were about to launch our next episode with Dr. Paul Wong, something actually happened that was so unexpected. And I'm just wondering whether you'd be able to share a little bit of insights with our audience today as to what that something was.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think most importantly, right up front, I'd like to say, if anything we talk about today is hard or triggering for any of our listeners, we strongly encourage you to practice self-care, whatever that is for you. It's really important that we share this, but also we're really aware for some people it might be uncomfortable in some ways to hear.
And to reach out and speak with someone too. It's really probably worthwhile actually adding in there too, Leanne, is that,
Yes.
you know, if it really is triggering for you, there is always the amazing service of Lifeline. To call them, they have terrific people to speak with if this is triggering for you. And the phone number for that is 131114. And there are a whole lot of different resources in everybody's area. So that's for you.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Leesa. Really, really important. Okay. Back in April, Easter, actually, Good Friday, a few days before I was about to take on some learning in trauma-informed practices, our own family trauma was unfolding in that my daughter, who was 26 weeks pregnant, found herself in a concerning situation. We were away camping in a caravan park, but quite remote and a terrifying, scary experience for her. I know it was scary for me. I can't imagine how it felt for her. It involved a couple of ambulance rides and my little baby grandson, my first grandson, Oliver, being born on the 10th of April, which was Good Friday, Good Monday. Oh, it wasn't good.
Wasn't a Good Friday or a good Monday.
Monday, but it's the Monday, and that set the course of a wave that we're still riding, of experiencing that cycle of premature birth and all the challenges that come with it. So reached out to you, my beautiful friend.
I remember that time.
Yeah.
I remember how frightened I was for you and your daughter, and how in that moment of struggle and real concern, how calm you were in trying to support her in that time of real need and real struggle for all of you, and being quite amazed from such a far distance away from you, not being able to help, but what was the one thing I could do to help you? And it was to listen and to support you in any way possible. I can't imagine, how you navigated that, but clearly on the other side of that, you've been able to do so much, which one day you might reflect on how much you have grown and the unexpected surprises, I guess, and learnings from that situation as it continues to unfold, as you say, in that wave.
I think that there are lots of lessons there, lots of gifts, and gratitude for understanding the science of well-being. And I want to say front that, we are people, professionals in the field of well-being. We understand what helps people to thrive. We understand tools that we can and strategies that we can support people with. But also, we are human. And when we're riding those waves, we are reminded of the impact that struggle can have in whichever way it shows up. The gratitude is in the knowing and the understanding, and even when you don't get it right, there's a heap of resources to draw on when you get quiet or you're reminded by your wonderful friends. And so grateful to have this. Actually, when I think about this whole experience, actually it's not about me. It was my daughter experiencing that, and how could I be her support? And it was incredibly scary, but also I feel like it's been a wonderful gift, as I feel closeness with my daughter, a new closeness, if that makes sense. So yeah, it has just been a wonderful gift, Leesa. I know that one of the most important things through the whole experience is that for well-being, we understand that connection is really important for our ability to take care of our well-being. And those connections, all of them who have been a support for my daughter, for our family, for me, so grateful for them. But I know also, Leesa, that as much as we were going through this challenge, you also were navigating some challenges as well.
Yeah, I think the universe was speaking very loudly at that time. It was quite challenging. I think before I tell about my sort of emergency at that time and what was happening, is I noticed from afar in your situation, because it had happened very, very quickly, and I was grateful to be able to be around there for you at that time. And I do remember how we, as humans, just when we're in a struggle situation, we can go into action very, very quickly, especially when it is an emergency, because, it's, I think, the natural ability of all of us to try and work out how can we help and support in any particular way. And how you did that for your daughter was just incredible. And even, hearing the stories in the hospital and the liaison with the nurses and the doctors, and, there was such a team around, and it just shows that, that community, our wellbeing is not just about us. It's often about our teams that we work with. And in your instance with your daughter, there's, the hospital, the ambulance people, there were so many people involved. And the smallest amount of support was, from me, where, we were talking about trying to release this podcast with Dr. Paul Wong, and we're like, Leanne, stop. You have something bigger to deal with at the moment. So let me take this. I'm going to let everybody know we're going on a break, a short break. We didn't realise how big the break needed to be, however, and we're really grateful that we've had this time because there was a lot going on. But that support, when you have a social network, there are so many amazing humans in our world that help in any shape or form. And that's where those learnings come from, of the unexpected surprises. And for you, that connection with your daughter and her having a wonderful mother to be able to support, like you really did support her in so many ways by listening and really thinking about, well, what support you needed to give, or was it time to just let her tell you what she needed? That was just incredible. So I guess for us, at that time, we really did need to bunker in to what was important. And I think for me, the other one for you is, you had started a new role, and that organisation was amazing and supported you in what you needed. And that was another, surprising and wonderful gift that people around you are able to support, which was wonderful. So I guess for me, the emergency that I had is my son is living in by 2 other states. So I'm currently in Victoria, and he's only 18 at the time, and he was living in Queensland and called to say he's a great surfer, but he had fallen, and the tip of his surfboard went straight through his eye. So he rang, I know, but it's the same sort of thing. He rang with that voice where you just know something is horrific. And his voice was very just in panic. And I said to him, so I can hear in your voice. I said, can you tell me, it's hit your eye, but is it bleeding? And he said, it's bleeding a lot. And so I had to have that calm reassurance to try and find out what was going on, because I couldn't see him or I could only hear him. And I just said to him, look, is anyone with you? And he said, yeah, the boys are with me. And I said, well, have you got a towel? Put the towel on and put some pressure onto your eye. He said, Mum, there's a lot of blood. And I said, okay, panicking in my mind. And then I just explained, can you get one of the boys to take a photo of your eye right now, so I can actually see, to know the significance of it, because you just don't know when you're talking to somebody. Anyway, eventually he sent a photo, and I thought, oh my goodness, you need to get there. So without panic, I just said, okay, I want you to put the towel back on your head, and I want you to get them to drive you immediately to an emergency hospital, which luckily for him was not too far away. So off he went. But then I sat in this really uncomfortable space of going, far out. I am 2 hours minimum away. I've got to get to the airport. So I tried to get onto flights, couldn't get on. There was nothing available for the next 2 days. So then I was frantic. I said to Andrew, that's it. I'm going to go and drive. I'm going to drive all the way from here. And he just went, now stop. That's not achievable. You are in a panic. You are exhausted. You're already burnt out from a whole lot of other things. It's time to stop and think. You just need to book the next available flight, and then we'll just talk to him every day. We talk to his housemates and make sure he's fine. Long story short, he ended up the first hospital that he went to, they didn't really treat him for much for concussion or anything, and they just put glue in his eye. And then he got an infection, and then it went on to a lovely doctor who I think might have been a professor, who came in and then said, have you had any scans, which I'd been saying. Eventually they said, you've actually broken your eye orbit, the bone in your eye, and our hospital can't support you. You'll need to go to another hospital to have surgery. So that, all of a sudden the struggle became more challenging as to whether he would lose his eye or not. Luckily, he hasn't, and he's still ongoing with some things. However, immediately in that sort of situation, after my husband saying he can't drive, we were able to support him in that way going forward, and eventually flew up and helped him. And as it is at the moment, he's just had to learn that every time he surfs, if he falls off, he has to help him. He can't have that injury again, is what they're saying, or he could lose his eye. And he's alive. So the grateful part is that he's okay. But it was a really challenging time as being so far away. And I kept thinking at that time, Leanne, I should be extremely grateful. He could be overseas and that would make it even more complex, but he's not. He's in Australia, not far away, but it was at the time enough to be so worried. But again, we just drew on the things that we could be grateful for. I was grateful for that he hadn't poked his eye out, and luckily the body is so amazing where when the board hit his eye, it actually just pushed his eyeball up, broke the bone, but it meant that his eye was not impacted. So, I'm just grateful for how the human body works.
Oh, Leesa.
So we laughed, and we both laughed about when these sorts of things happen, when struggle happens, how it can be really challenging. But what you were talking about before, we were able to draw on a whole lot of resources that we know for ourselves, but how hard that must be for people who don't know, and why reaching out to a social group or someone to talk to get some help is really important.
I think what has rung home to me during our recent challenges is that importance of support and knowing that it's okay to ask for it, because, hey, I don't like to burden people with my challenges, but how do I make it lighter? The heaviness of the experience, how do I make it lighter if I don't share with someone? Someone might be a close friend, it might be a counsellor or a doctor, but how do you lighten that load? And one of the things that I found myself in our experience was just getting quiet, because the mind, I don't know if this was your experience, Leesa, but I'm a pretty safe bet that it was probably a bit similar, in that your mind just goes crazy. You want to protect the person you love, you want to
fix it.
You want to fix it. Absolutely. There's all these things going on. You don't want to see them in pain, and you would do anything to take that pain away from them. But what is occurring at the same time is that you're generating your own pain and discomfort in trying to relieve someone else's. I guess that wake up moment for me was that just that release, that moment of release. I remember being in the shower one morning and just bawling my eyes out, like I had to let it out.
I had to do the same, because I was being a big and brave and courageous woman, but internally I was like a duck just trying to paddle as fast as I could underwater. Do you know, Leanne, that reminds me a little bit about, we've talked about this many times before in our podcast, in Adam Grant's work with give and take, the givers and takers. And we are so good at giving, and we forget ourselves. And I think that's possibly one of the biggest learnings from this, just one situation where we both were struggling at pretty much the same time, in that we were so busy giving to others that we forgot about our own well-being. And that's that whole thing, you hear people say, if you don't fill your own cup, how can you fill for others?
Yeah.
But we're so busy depleting our own cup at that time, because we're trying to keep some sort of balance and normality and trying to help somebody else, which is a natural thing for us. And why wouldn't you? That's part of being human. But at what cost did that have? And I think that's the thing that we're reflecting on now is, I know for myself at the time, there was quite a few other things that I'm not sharing today, but caused a bit of burnout for me. And so how did I navigate that? And what we were talking about before is that when you know and you're aware of that, you can make some choices to improve that. But if you don't know what to do, that's when it can be stuck. But for us, I was able to use a lot of Kristen Neff's work. And I know you probably do the same naturally too, with the self-compassion. And I think for me, what really stood out for me when I just felt so exhausted, so depleted, and a little bit not supported, that was just my internal dialogue, in that I needed to be really aware, be mindfully aware of, this was actually a time where I was struggling, and it is okay because in the theory with Kristen Neff's self-compassion, when we're mindfully aware of this, then we can understand that this is a common humanity thing where struggle is, everybody has struggle, and there can be gifts of struggle. But if we're isolating, then it's not actually going to help us.
No.
And then we have a choice in that time when we say, well, obviously I'm in a time of struggle. Well, this is normal for people. This is, a common thing across the world, not just Australia, anywhere. It's everything. So what can I do? Something of kindness to myself to help me to either sit in the discomfort for a little while, but then emerge in a way that is going to be of help and of benefit for my well-being. And so that's what I had to do. And I've only just recently come back from I had applied for some long service leave because I needed to get away to restore my own well-being. And I had 2 weeks away, which was fantastic. I was able to reconnect with my son to make sure he was fine. And I feel 100% better already.
No, Leesa, I don't know about you, but again,
You do the little giggle.
because I feel like I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, as people in our profession,
Yes,
I don't know about you, but
we're the worst at it.
no, like when I share tips or strategies with my daughter, especially, she'll say to me,
Yeah.
"Stop with your positive shit, Mum." Excuse my language.
Correct.
She says it. The funny thing is, recently, in a conversation with one of the nurses in the NICU, which is the neonatal intensive care unit.
And can we just say very quickly, for any neonatal nurses and the doctors and nurses, we need to have a big shout out. You guys do the most incredible job.
Absolutely.
I have had friends who've also had their children in there, and they are always positive. They are always reassuring for the parent as well as the child. They deserve, I tell you what, 1,000,000 times of a pay rise. You are incredible people.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. But we were having this conversation and having a bit of a chuckle because you get to know the people. You form this relationship with these people, and
you're
you
vulnerable
spend a lot
in front of them. You're crying your guts out. You need to talk, and they listen.
That's right, and they get to know you as people, and I was actually really nervous as we sort of, I'd had that time. I'd been able to have some time off, but then I had to go back to life. I had to go back to work, and I juggle a few different things, and I was really scared that meant that I wouldn't be able to spend some time with my daughter and my grandson. My mind was busy making stories about what that might look like. And so we were talking with the nurse one night, and she said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a positive psychology practitioner, and I work in wellbeing, and she said, oh, I'm not surprised. and I said, oh, okay, and we sort of said, Kimberly said, oh, Mum always talks about our positive shit.
That's really good stuff that she don't have to say.
As much as she was making fun of it, we had this really rich conversation in that, the nurse said the questions that I was asking in those early days when there was all this uncertainty, and I think that the first thing you go to is, all of the worst possible concoctions in your mind. But I remember, I knew my daughter was really scared, and I remember saying things to her, like asking her how she felt, asking her to, like, asking questions that would get her to say how she was feeling in a way of, kindness, but it might have been harder for her to do that, her and I alone, but it was easier around the baby and to perhaps put it into some language that was helping her to see, but also helping her to learn as well. And helping me to see that, okay, she's okay, seeing how she's thinking and all that sort of thing. And but the nurse said, it was those questions that you were asking, and I thought, that's, even though I was struggling, I was still drawing on what I knew and understood, and that was reassuring. How about you? When you
I was pretty much the same, but I think what I was just picking up on too is that ability of, and I suppose the powerfulness, that's not even really the word I want to say, but hope theory. When we are hopeful, it's like you're reframing. So we go back a bit when we were talking about at the top of the show about positive psychology, and they're changing the name for that because it rings a bell of, it is a bit hocusy pocusy, but it's actually not. The reason that positive psychology began was way back in that era in 2010 or before that, where Martin Seligman and his crew were all talking about, why is psychology always about fixing things? It needs to be something different. And so as the field of wellbeing science has actually grown and continues to, as all science does, but all of a sudden now we have those opportunities that when things are not great, there are some choices we can make. We can make a choice to go down into that they used to call it self-pity, pity city or something like that, they used to call it. Or we can try and reframe it, which is obviously what, when you're in a crap space, and I know I've been in that space recently where it's just, and as you say, shit just goes on and you just go, what? Like, how does that actually where has it come from? I lead such a beautiful life, but yet struggle happens to every person. Not all the time. Sometimes it's a lot of times, and yet it's challenging. But I can go down in that little, what is it, the pity city sort of thing, and dwell on it and struggle in it and stay in there. Or like, remember when we talked to Craig Hassard and who was talking about, that opportunity to really be mindfully aware of what's going on and sit in there and really discover what is happening in that struggle, but not to stay there too long. Stay there as long as you need, but then have another thought process of, okay, well, what else is possible here? And that's what you sort of did with your daughter, is helping to think in a different way. And whether it comes with our experience because of like coaching and etc., I'm not sure. But I think for me with our son is that I was holding a space for him. I've done this naturally with my brother. I've had other experiences where the struggle has been horrendous. And my natural ability is to go and pause and then really almost reflect and review. So that's that self-awareness of what's going on. What is the first thing that we need to do to move from here? What's the need? What's the want? And go from there. Which reminds me a little bit of that acceptance commitment theory with Russ Harris and his team, particularly Anne Bailey and Joseph Chiarachi. I always get his name wrong, so I'm sorry, Joseph, if I have. But it's a choice point that they've got. So for anybody who'd like to find out more about that, there's actmindfully.com, I think it is, and you can look it up. But it's that point where you have the point of like a V, and the choice that you can make is what I need to do going to take me away from what I need to do or towards what I need to do? And I really like that, because that helped me with, in a way, with my son, is yes, it was an emergency and I had to go into action phase, but what did I need to choose to help that situation? A bit like with you guys, how you worked. So it's just made me reflect on, even in the smallest possible decisions, we do have a choice as humans. We're very lucky, all of us do. And it's, what choice are you making, working towards or away from?
And I think that plays into, I guess, that mindful awareness. I remember having the conversation with Elena Silva.
Oh, she's beautiful.
And actually I actually can't remember if it was on our podcast or in another conversation, but learning about deep listening. And
With Miriam
Miriam
Rose. Yes.
Rose.
Sorry. She is phenomenal.
But that deep listening,
To Deary.
yeah, just getting quiet.
Mm.
Whoa, that can be a bit confronting, but also quite enabling, if that makes sense.
An opportunity, I often call it.
Yeah, it is definitely an opportunity, in my experience anyway. It was uncomfortable. Sure, it was, that moment in the shower. My day starts mindfully in the shower, and that moment of realization was quite a powerful one and quite a release. But then it was that moment of contemplation, and maybe it was prayer. I don't define it as prayer, but maybe it was just, what do I need? What's going to get me through here? How can I help? How can I be of service? And one of the big things was understanding that I was actually experiencing burnout in the situation. The Nagoski sisters, I can't think of both sisters' names. I'm going to call them the Nagoski sisters. They've got a beautiful book on burnout.
Yeah,
So
I love that
we
book.
can share the link. But they have a term they share around human giver syndrome. And I think as mums, we are very skilled at give, and not, or perhaps ignoring, not necessarily not realizing it, might be ignoring those signs where, hey. So that moment in the shower for me was that, hey, and realizing that, all right, I need to close this stress loop, because that's what's happening. How we're going to do that.
That stress loop is phenomenal in the book. And I was just trying to get the book for people. It's called Burnout, the two girls. But that stress cycle is really, really important because, and again, the self-awareness really helps because you can feel the stress. Like yesterday, I had a stressful situation to maneuver and navigate, and I could feel pain in my chest. I was like, oh my goodness me. But it was very tight because there was some stress going on. But when you're aware of that, then I was able to actually identify it, feel more comfortable with it, and then breathe, because I knew that that's how I work. But the stress loop that I had learned about from the two girls were that you need to move. Now, whatever that looks like. So what my husband and I did, which is, I wish I could show you a video because it's quite funny, but we put some music on, full on music, not just a little bit, and turn it right up and danced to get it out. So you can see me on the screen earlier, but everybody else can't. But I just want you to imagine the funniest, biggest movement dancing. Any sort of movement, whether it's going for a walk, going for a run, sometimes people like just to have a bath, but completing the stress cycle is vital. And a lot of people don't. What a lot of people do in struggle is their way of dealing with it to get home, get on the couch, have a drink of wine, a bit of chocolate, whatever it might be, but they're not finishing with the movement. So therefore the stress stays in your body and is affecting the rest of your body internally, all of your organs.
And there's a weight, I guess I would describe it as. It's a yucky feeling. I'm finding it hard to describe, but I think if you've experienced it, you kind of know it. Yeah. I know in the hospital, I stayed with my daughter the whole 2 weeks, in those first 2 weeks I was there. I didn't leave her. That I'm sure I drove her up the wall sometimes. But, at the same time, she wanted me there. So I wasn't overstaying my welcome. I was there because she wanted me there. But at the same time, I was holding all of this space for her all of the time. I was trying to treat it with care. I was probably tiptoeing around things, trying to navigate, taking a lot of energy for myself, trying to think about how do I help her? And that, for me, closing that cycle was, realizing that heaviness and going outside of it was the Women's and Children's Hospital in Adelaide, where my little baby grandson Oliver is, and it was going outside, going for a walk. There's paths all around there. I'd get out. It was cold. remember it was, just starting to get closer to winter, so it was cold, and
that connects you to life, doesn't it? That connection with especially the cold breeze. It reminds you that you are part of the world, you are connected to the world, and by you walking and grounding yourself, reminds you that you are human too.
So helpful. And then there's another area in the hospital, which right in the center, there's like an outside cafe, and I started to go there as my place. There were pigeons that would visit there, and I used to enjoy. I know this sounds funny, but I enjoyed their company. They were my friends, and I would go and sit with them and just really appreciate their busyness and also everything else that was happening around, and also considering everything in context. It was just, for me, that walking, that air was really, really helpful.
And nature does that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was talking to you at the top of this podcast about the beautiful, and if anyone hasn't, Indira Naidu, she's written a book called The Space Between the Stars, and tragically one of her sisters passed away, took her life. And the book is about how she healed through nature. And in there are so many golden moments about what she was learning from other people about nature and how it works. And one of the things that she talked about was this about birds and their feathers and the importance of it. I won't share the punchline. Read the book, it's fantastic. But it talks about there are things that are ending and that there are also things that are beginning again. So it's this cycle of life of what's happening. But in that moment, you can actually appreciate, and nature can actually help you to really inject that awe in nature, that it is a continual life cycle continuing on and on and on all around you. And if you sit long enough, you see that, and then it's much easier to appreciate and be grateful for the things that are actually going well when you're in that struggle, when everything just seems so terrible at the time, which it is. But around that, there is some other things there that can help you to be grateful and look for, but it's hard to spot when you're right in that struggle period. But you going outside seeing that was I suppose a time to acknowledge that and to be aware of it.
Yeah. Something you and I were talking about before we started this conversation was a concept, I think you said by Ben Crow, I hope this is right. You mentioned interventions.
Yes.
And when we talk about stuff in the wellbeing space, we talk about positive interventions. Yeah. And when you mentioned that interventions, I thought, yes, I just so connected to that because, thinking about the challenges that both of us have had, we have had to draw on our interventions. We've had to create for ourselves some strategies to walk through those, navigate those uncertain waters. It's powerful. It was powerful for me. So I
Yeah, and doing the inner work is really important. And I think I was introduced to that intervention rather than intervention. It's made me realize that the interventions is a little bit more like on that fixing it type of thing, where the interventions is where you actually find the gold about yourself, who you really are at the core, and to identify what's happening with you, to be able to make a choice as to what to do next. And I think that's the real gold in that inner work, which I really do feel that for both of us in these experiences we're sharing today is that self-compassion piece is really, really important. And that mindful awareness, it had to start there first before you could actually identify that common humanity and then be kind to yourself. Like what we did. So one of the first things we talked about today was when this was happening for you with your daughter, it was horrific. And you were trying to keep going with what was going on with our podcast. And I had to say, stop. No, this is way more important than that at the minute. We need to take a break. So letting that stop and take that pause was an action we took straight away. But then as things went on, there was a situation that you needed to deal with at the time.
Leesa, I'm just having a moment of, when we started our wonderful podcast last year, however long ago it was, 12 months ago, a bit more than that, we were originally talking about imposter syndrome. And we sort of talked about some strategies around that mindful awareness, self-compassion,
That inner critic,
inner critic, and that
internal dialogue that sabotages us all the time.
yes, but also drawing on that inner coach. And I think I've drawn on that for this as well. Like when you're in the face of adversity, having that, using some of that Amy Cuddy stuff around, presence, being present, almost like, standing at the face of adversity with, what does Brene call it?
Get in the arena.
She does say get in the arena, but she also says something around strong back, soft heart or something like that. Do you know that?
Oh, I don't know that one. No.
It's like being strong, but also being vulnerable, I guess, at the same time.
Yeah, a loving heart.
Something like that. And I think that's in these circumstances that you have to be strong, but you also need to be aware that you're allowed to be weak, but weak, or that's weak is a fair enough,
But doesn't it remind you of the word and, the power of and? Because yes, we can struggle and have gifts of joy. So in your situation, it was a really tough time for everyone. Like it was a life and death stuff for you.
Yes.
But and you had the gift of your baby grandson.
Yes.
And a daughter who was then now healthy and not her world was not vulnerable at that point after that.
Yes.
So it's struggle and life, life throws us that. And I think it's the struggle is where we find the gold in life. Yes. And you have much more of an appreciation and a gratitude for things because, like for me with Charlie, or my son I probably should say, Charlie, his name is, I'm just so grateful that like he had a horrific injury, but he has not lost his sight. He did not lose his eye. He is alive and he's able to still surf. Like that is so many things to be grateful for. I was grateful that I could get up to see him and go to meet with the professor about what was going to happen for him.
Yes.
There were so many things it might not have happened. But with every struggle, as hard at the time as it is, there is that and that there will be, that time may pass.
What was your ands, Leesa? Because yes, as parents, we're worried, we're going through a challenging time trying to support those we love. But those we love are the ones that are actually sitting in that and whatever that is for them. And you are witness to them struggling, but also, it hurts deeply, doesn't it? Like because you so want to support them, but you're trying to find the words and it is very different. I'm going to be totally honest here. It is very different helping someone close to you than helping a client
or a friend.
A friend, yes, because you
because it's personal and it's love. I know you connect.
There's a lot at stake for you as well, emotionally, and there's just so much. And I think that's
the part that's probably really important to, as we end towards this podcast recording, is that whilst you're always being the giver in those struggle situations and trying to support and help, you've got to remember that you're going through that struggle too. Absolutely. And I think that's what we've been both chatting about, is that our own well-being declines because we're so focused on supporting others. And so that's what they call compassion fatigue.
Yes.
And when you have compassion fatigue, you're exhausted. And so what strategies do you do and use that are going to help you? And I know for me, like I mentioned before, I had to book myself because I knew I was not in a good place. And I booked some long service leave and went off away on holidays. And for me, I was so grateful. I got up there, we weren't going to do anything. Went to Queensland, was able to meet with our son. And every day, Leanne, it was like a gift from God or the heavens or whoever it was, is that there were pods of whales every single day, dolphins.
Beautiful.
And I just got to stop and appreciate, eat well, exercise, all the things that I hadn't had an opportunity to do as much of. And I just feel so much better already.
Oh, Leesa.
So it's reminding ourselves that we matter too.
Yeah. And I think I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for that reminder. We could sit here talking for hours, as you and I do normally. we talk for ages. But they are always, always such rich and wonderful conversations. But we have a wonderful season planned for our listeners. Really so excited. There's some wonderful things that we are going to be talking about. One of the things I'm most excited about is exploring that trauma-informed practices as we sort of move along our journey with our guests, and that's coming up. What about you?
There's a couple of little sneaky peeks that we won't talk too much about because I don't want to give it away. But I do think the trauma-informed practices is fantastic, as well as a little bit of diversity in our workplaces, how courage might show up and support us. But also I'm really excited about learning a little bit about how we can better create cultures of safety and care, plus a lot more.
Yeah. I'm so looking forward to it.
Same.
All right.
Thank you again for all of your kindness, everybody. And we look forward to sharing the next podcast coming up.
Absolutely. And just a reminder as we do close that if you do need to practice some self-care, go and do that for yourself now.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Leanne. Have a great day. Bye.
And thank you for listening to the Imperfect Us podcast. As always, we are extremely grateful to our executive producer, Brenton Ainsworth, for helping us to put this episode together. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone you care about, and we would be grateful if you could rate this podcast on iTunes. To continue the conversation and see what we're up to, you can connect with us on LinkedIn. Just search for Imperfect Us. Bye for now.